The cockpit voice recording from the accident with Yeti Airlines Flight 691 in 2023 has been released, or more accurately, leaked. Hello aviators, how are you today? My name is Magnar Nordahl. I'm an ATR captain and instructor. On the 15th of January, an ATR 72-500 from Yeti Airlines crashed while on approach to Pokhara International Airport in Nepal. Sadly, all 72 passengers and crew members lost their lives. In December 2023, the Nepalese Aircraft Accident Investigation Commission released the final report. It confirms that the propellers were feathered by moving both condition levers to the feather position, resulting in the loss of thrust from both propellers. I have created a video about this, and you will find a link in the description below. The cockpit voice recording captures the last 5 minutes of the flight. Most of the conversation is in Nepali, and it has been translated to English by a friend of me. Since the recording has not been officially released, I will keep the audio off. Instead, I have added captions showing the conversation and other sounds from the cockpit. Before presenting the final 5 minutes, I will provide some background information about the flight. The flight crew was composed of 2 captains. Kamal KC, who occupied the right-hand seat, served as the commander and was responsible for providing familiarization training for Anu Kativada. Anu, who was seated in the left-hand seat, was the pilot flying. Early reports incorrectly stated that Anu was the co-pilot, set to become a captain after this flight. But in reality, she was already a captain, and after this flight, she will be qualified to serve as a commander for flights to Pokhara. At the time of the accident, the airport had been open for only 2 weeks. However, the instrument approach procedures had not yet been published. Therefore, the pilots had to operate in the Visual Flight Rules, VFR. Due to the challenging terrain, landing on runway 30 was preferred, while runway 12 was used for takeoff. The accident flight was the crew's second flight to Pokhara that day. On the first flight, they have landed on runway 30 and departed from runway 12. On the second flight, while en route, Kamal decided to let Anu land on runway 12. The approach to runway 12 is very demanding and should have been briefed before the flight. The flights were short, and there wasn't enough time to provide a good briefing during flight. As they got closer to the airport, Kamal continued to brief Anu about the procedure. In the final moments of the flight, both pilots had the focus outside the cockpit, and when Anu requested flaps 30, Kamal accidentally moved both condition levers to the feather position. The condition lever has several functions. 1. It starts and stops the engine by controlling the fuel shutoff valve. 2. It feathers the propeller, where the propeller blades are positioned parallel to the airflow to minimize drag and eliminate thrust. This causes the propeller to stop or rotate slowly. 3. It regulates the propeller RPM, also known as NP. In this aircraft, NP is regulated automatically when the condition levers is set to the auto position. NP is 100% for takeoff and MCT power, and 82% for climb and cruise. If the automatic function fails, the condition lever can be moved to 100% override position. For a detailed explanation of the propeller, please check this video here. There is a link in the description below. Each engine powers 2 generators, a DC generator driven by the gas turbine, that's the core of the engine, and an AC generator known as AC Wild, and this is driven by the propeller gearbox, so it only runs when the propeller is turning. This is the control panel for the AC Wild system. Each AC Wild generator supplies electric power to an AC Wild bus, which distributes power to the main hydraulic pumps, windshield heating, and heating for certain air data probes, like the pitot tube. When both propellers are feathered, both AC Wild generators are lost. resulting in loss of power to the main hydraulic pumps, windshield heating, and the heating for air data probes. Some probes, however, are powered by DC as a backup. These failures activate the following alerts on the crew alert panel: hydraulic, anti-icing, and electric. There is a single chime, and an amber caution light will flash in front of each pilot. I will now present the transcript from the cockpit voice recorder in real time. At the beginning of the video, Kamal is explaining the procedure for Anu. My impression is that neither pilot was fully prepared for this. The accident report indicates that Kamal decided to execute the visual approach to runway 12 only when they were en route to Pokhara. And given the short duration of the flight, there was not enough time to brief the new procedure properly. I also observed that the crew did not follow the standard operating procedures, SOP, as outlined in the ATI Flight Crew Training Manual. For example, when extending the flaps, the correct procedure is as follows. The pilot flying calls flap 15. The pilot monitoring verifies that the airspeed is below the limit and responds with speed check before selecting flap 15. When flap 15 is indicated, the pilot monitoring will call flap 15. Pilot flying will then check the indicator and call check. This sequence was not followed. The accident report states when the pilot flying called for flaps 30. The flaps did not deploy, but both propellers were feathered. When the flaps is extending, the aircraft will pitch up, requiring the pilot or autopilot to push the nose down and trim the aircraft. When I am flying manually and request flaps extension, I am ready to push the nose down to counteract the pitch up. If the aircraft does not pitch up, something must be wrong. The pilot flying should have noticed this and checked the flap indicator or asked the pilot monitoring to confirm the position of the flaps. While feathering a propeller on the ground, it is easy to hear a change in the propeller noise. But I don't know how this will sound in flight. Maybe it's more subtle. When both propellers are feathered, there was a single chime, amber caution lights flashing in front of each pilot, and 3 amber lights on the crew alert panel. But after the call for selecting flaps 30, the crew rushed through the before landing checklist. It was done very quickly, and I suspect neither pilot was checking the indications. When the checklist was completed, pilot flying queried about the ELEC indications on the cap, but there was no response from the pilot monitoring. The correct procedure will be to call pilot monitoring to check the system. Realizing you have lost one or both AC wild buses, you must check the source that powers the generators, and that will be the NP indicators. At this point, it seems the pilot monitoring was focused on the flight path and did not monitor the indications in the cockpit. But shortly after, he called Alpha, indicating a failure of the angle of attack probe heating. It's unclear why he didn't notice the other warning lights. Additionally, the pilot flying repeatedly mentioned the lack of torque, but neither pilot checked the NP indicators. Feathering the propellers was a mistake, but this was not the primary cause of the accident. I know about 2 incidents, one involving an ATR and another a Dash 8, where the first officer mistakenly feathered one or both propellers, instead of selecting landing flaps. In both cases, the captain promptly identified and corrected the error. Therefore, my conclusion is that the most likely cause was that neither pilot noticed that both propellers were feathered. But they were faced with many indications: the single chime, flashing MC lights, and 3 amber caution lights on the crew alert panel. Additionally, they had 14 amber lights on the overhead panel. And both the torque and NP indicators showed 0. How did I overlook all those warnings? I cannot tell. The EU has imposed a ban on all airline companies from Nepal, including Yeti Airlines. The primary reason is that the Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal serves both as a regulatory and operational body. In 2022, ICAO formally requested that Nepal separate its Civil Aviation Authority into 2 distinct entities, one for service provision and another for regulation. Until this separation occurs, Nepalese airlines will remain banned by the EU. According to First Post, Nepal has one of the worst air safety records globally, Over the past 30 years, more than 50 flights have crashed in the country. While the challenging terrain and rapid changing weather conditions makes it challenging to fly in Nepal, those factors should not excuse a high accident rate. When facing difficult conditions, it is crucial to implement measures to mitigate the risks. This may lead to flight cancellations, but this is much better than risking an accident. Safety work must begin at the top, with the government, followed by the CAA, the airlines, and finally the pilots. While you can put a finger on the pilots for making those mistakes, the real culprit lies in the lack of regulatory oversight. This article by Admiral Claudeberg is the grim story about an airport that was rushed into operations too early, a dangerous approach procedure, corruption on a national scale, and a regulatory body that threw caution to the wind, at the expense of lives. Admiral Claudeberg is hereby recommended. And that is all for this time. Thank you for watching, have a wonderful day, and happy landing.